Thank you all very much. You know, I had just finished reading Malcolm Gladwell's The Outliers. I just turned off the light at 11 o'clock and the smoke alarm went off. Not my favorite sound. And we had a guest. So I jumped up and ran around the house. We have one of those houses that has all the smoke alarms connected. So they're all screaming. But I had a feeling it was the one up in my office. We have a single-story house with a bonus room above the garage, or as I like to call it, the intergalactic headquarters of Lou Heckler and Associates, but my wife calls it the room above the garage. But anyhow, I ran up there. We had recently had a smoke detector put in there, and I thought it might be defective. I ran up and I ripped the battery out, and sure enough, all the smoke alarms went off. Well, I wasn't about to try to fix things. I'm not what you'd call handy, I guess you'd say. I'm kind of like a fellow we used to know down the street from us who said his toolkit was a cardboard box with a hose and a hammer in it. That's pretty much me, too. If you can't hit it or wet it, I'm pretty much out to sea. So a couple of days later, we called the electrician and asked him to come. And, I wish I could tell you that I try really hard to go by that adage that says, don't read a book by its cover. But I do it sometimes. When there was a knock on our door that Monday morning, I opened the door. There was a really young guy standing there. I mean, he was like no years old as far as I could tell. And I thought, oh no. And he said, Mr. Heckler? I said, yes. He said, my name is Daniel. I'm here to repair your smoke alarm. I said, okay, all right. So he came in. Now, sir, tell me what exactly happened. So we stood there in the entry hall and talked about this for a few minutes. And Daniel then said, well, let me start on one side of the house and I'll look at all the rest of them too. I said, all right, okay. So Daniel went over to our bedroom. It's very slow the way he moved. It's very thorough, and he checked every smoke alarm, ending with the one in the intergalactic headquarters. And sure enough, when he put that battery back in, everything screamed. He said, Mr. Heckler, I believe we have found the problem. Now, this was 42 minutes after he had arrived, and thought perhaps I could have saved him the time. But again, I'm not very mechanical, so I just went with it. So he got up there, and he then took the battery out, and he held it in his hand like you might hold a magic heirloom handed down by your Aunt Tilly or something. And he said, you know, Mr. Heckler, this shouldn't be this hot. This is hot. It's hot. It's hot. I said, okay, it's hot. We're going to replace this smoke detector. I said, well, you know, your company actually only put it in a few months ago. I know that, sir. I have the paperwork, but we're going to replace it. So he replaced it, put the battery back in, and I braced myself, and it was quiet. It was perfect. Went back out to his truck, and he came back in. He said, Mr. Heckler, I have some very good news. There will not be any charge for today's service. I said, wow. Why is that? Well, you're under warranty. I said, but you've been here for like 44 and a half minutes, and it seems like you should. No, sir, it's all on us. So he finished that. We were walking down the steps, and just before I went out the door, I touched his arm, and I said, Daniel, can I ask you something? How much training have you had doing this? He said, you know, Mr. Heckler, I get asked that a lot, because I know I look young. But he said, I had 2,000 hours of schooling. And since that time, I've had 8,000 hours of practical experience. Now, if you read Malcolm Gladwell's The Outliers that I referred to, one of the things he said in there, and by the way, the book The Outliers is about people who are peak performers. How is it that they got there? How did the Beatles get there? How did Bill Gates get there? How did all these high achievers get there? And what he says is every one of them put in a minimum of 10,000 hours in their profession, in their selected field in order to get there, and that was Daniel. Even at the age of 28, which he told me he was, not no years, he had put in 10,000 hours.